that moment is so triggering for so many of us. And so to be able to go back and kind of reframe that is a huge guilt release, you know? So it's that type of work that I think is so powerful.
Welcome to Your Journey to Joy podcast. I'm your host, Moyra Gorski, and I'm on a mission to help you find joy in the chaos of life. As a retired nurse, multi-passionate entrepreneur, and mom of 4 adult children, I know what it's like to feel the overwhelm of it all and wonder if and when the joy will show up again. And I've learned it's up to us to go find that joy. On this show, you will hear inspiring stories from those who have overcome all kinds of life challenges, tips on how to stay healthy and vibrant during the ups and downs of life, and simple ways on finding joy in your own life. Let's face it, life is messy, yet when we travel together on this journey, support and encourage each other along the way, that joy starts to show up again. I'm so excited to lead you on this journey of you to find the joyful life that you deserve. Well, welcome to another episode of the podcast. So glad that you are coming back to listen. I'm your host, Moyra Gorski, talking a lot about joy this season as we stepped into the second season. But really what I want to continue to focus on is the taking care of ourselves. If we are the moms or the dads or the loved ones, that the people that have people in our lives that are struggling. I mean, last season was a lot of talk about those stories, and I shared a lot of that, which is super valuable. And as you've heard my story before, like I'm the mom that sits on this side of the table that's watched my daughter struggle and learned myself that I really needed to take care of myself in order for me to show up for myself as well as for my daughter, my business and my life and things like that. So there'll be lots of talk about that this season. And today I have a friend coming to join me who's has been in the same situation as myself. Rayna is a mom of 3 children, and one of them was significant mental health issues as she was growing up. And so I'm excited to have a conversation with her. And as a result of that, she has learned that hypnotherapy has been a great tool for her to use herself. And of course, she's now sharing that with others and helping other moms and women that have people in their life that have mental health challenges. And again, helping them realize that it's time for them to take care of themselves and free themselves of that guilt and the shame and all kinds of things. And we're going to talk about that today. So again, Rayna Smith is joining me today. And a mom of 3, but she's a hypnotherapist and also a physical therapist, I believe. We are going to have a nice conversation today. And so thank you. Really honored that you're here with me today, Rayna.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, we seem to, I mean, again, when I hooked up with you, met you, I was like, wow, you seem to be who I am, right? Somebody that has a child who's struggling.
Right.
But as you've moved into helping people in that area, I'm like, I'm also your ideal client.
Right.
Of somebody that has learned that, I have learned, and many people don't, they maybe know that they need to take care of themselves and do something or put themselves first, but they just don't really know what that means. And they don't understand the importance of it. And sometimes they're just so lost in their chaos that they're just like, they can't make time. They don't know how to make the time and stuff like that. So I'm glad that we're here to have that discussion. Because again, we seem so very similar in our experiences. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, again, as your life progressed as a mom with your children, I always say, share your story as much or as little as you would like to, or you feel like is important. But I'd love for you to, share with my audience about kind of what happened in your life with your daughter and her struggles.
Yeah. So I am, like you mentioned, a physical therapist, and I was doing that I've been doing that forever. And I would say maybe about when my son was born, he's 20, I went to part-time work, and it was very, it's convenient. And I did that for years. I did pediatrics and geriatrics. And what happened was my daughter started refusing school, started showing symptoms of anxiety, OCD, depression. And it got to a point where the school refusal was just so severe that I left my job to just be home with her, because there was nowhere else she could be. We did a lot of therapy, anyone else who's done this knows there's intensive day programs, there's home programs, there's outpatient programs, there's inpatient programs. It just felt like I was always in therapy with her. It was just a constant part of my life, just being in therapy. So when it came to me needing therapy or me really needing an outlet, it was a lot of hesitation on my part of not wanting to take more time to go work on myself, because I'm already spending all of my time working on her. And
you're exhausted physically and mentally.
Yeah. And I have 2 other kids. It didn't seem like there was any time. And as much as everybody can tell you it's important, when you're in the middle of it, it seems impossible. And while I was home, I decided to learn hypnosis, which is something that I would say I know a lot about. Before I started, I did hypnobirthing with my kids. So it was something I personally experienced. I learned Reiki back in 95, dating myself a little bit. So it's something I've always done. It's something I've always liked, that holistic approach to healing. And when I first started doing hypnotherapy and learning it, I really thought I would focus on pain and chronic pain, since I'm a physical therapist and I work a lot with that population. But the more I did it and the more involved I got in it, the more I realized that it's something good for myself. It's something really healing for the situation I was in. And it really brought me to, other moms who are in this situation, who are struggling and not taking time for themselves. That's really where my passion lies. It's not in, chronic pain. It's really in helping other people like myself kind of find their way out of that, that bubble of just not having the energy or the time or the ability to take care of themselves at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I know then when I was in the midst of, things being, again, that similar situation where our daughter was home, but she was in this area and then she was doing local treatment, and then you're kind of back and forth, and I can only go visit her between 4 and 6. So there I go. And here, son, you make the dinner and I'll be home later. And like all of this back and forth. And then I was trying to juggle my business, which was growing so well because of all the time I'd put in, which was great. But it was just like, holy cow. I mean, I was grateful that at that time and even today, that I have my own business, that I could kind of say to some of my other gals on my team, like, okay, I'm not available during this time. And when I did have the time, I could put the time in. So I didn't have to, like you, which I think many come into that situation, that they have to quit work because they end up missing work, or they have to go in late, or they have to leave early. And after a while, it's like, okay, well, I can't go to work anymore. Now, today, right, things could be a little bit different with all of this work from home and stuff like that. But
right.
The point is, again, when you want to focus your attention there. It's again, that's sometimes what you have to do. And I know when I would come home from those, it was just like I was so exhausted, and to have just, go in that brain space of, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this for me. It's like, no, I just want a glass of wine and maybe some cookies and sit and shut myself off to the world by watching American Idol or, some cooking show or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that many of us can probably relate that that's what we tend to do, as opposed to, oh, come on, it's just one more thing I got to do for myself. Forget it. I'm just not going to do it. I just need some sleep or some zoning out time, something. Yeah. And do a little bit of chat about I've talked about hypnotherapy. I've talked about hypno breath work and meditation, like just to do the 101, because people are like, oh, hypnotherapy, that's, where you on stage and then you go and end up hitting yourself or clucking like a duck or something like that. And it's really not like that. Right.
No, it's not at all. And I feel like the media has given it a bad rap, where people definitely think that it's like a mind control thing. My number one question is, how do I know that I'm not going to be out of control and you're going to have me do something silly, like cluck like a chicken? And the main thing is hypnosis it's just a very relaxed state that we drift in and out of all the time. If you're driving your car home, which this is always my favorite example, if you're driving your car home and it's a familiar route and you get home and you're like, oh, I don't even remember driving here, right? You were never out of control. If something happened and a car cut you off, you would immediately know where you were and you'd be in control of that car. And it's kind of the same thing. That's a hypnotic state when you kind of zone out and forget that how you got there. You're daydreaming, right? But during that time, you're still in complete control. You're not going to hit a car that pulls out in front of you. Your conscious mind's going to take over and you're going to stop the car. So it's the same type of thing. When you're doing hypnotherapy, you're always in control. You always know what's going on. It's more of a deep meditative state. So if I say something that doesn't resonate with you and you don't like it, your conscious mind will come back and say, what's happening? I don't like that. Stop. So yeah, it's definitely something that we experience all the time. If you're engrossed in a movie and then the movie's over and you're like, God, that didn't feel like 3 hours, right? It's because you're so engrossed in what's going on. It's that state of just hyper focus on not what's going on. It's your conscious mind just letting your subconscious and your imagination take over.
And so then how does that help us with, again, what we're dealing with life? How does that's great. Again, but then I think the next question is then how does that really help us during that time? If we want to relax, that's great. But really, why would we want to do that to improve or, for the future kind of thing? So
when you're in the hypnotic state, essentially what it means is that just mind has kind of checked out. It's gotten bored. It's moved on. And that's when you can talk directly to your subconscious. And your subconscious is where all of the magical changes happen. It's where if you're a smoker and you are triggered to smoke every time you get in a car, well, it's your subconscious mind where we can reframe that. So when you get in the car, you have no desire for a cigarette at all. Like the thought of smoking in your car appalls you. That change takes place in the subconscious mind. If we were to talk to your conscious mind about that, you're going to analyze it. You're going to say that can't work. That's not possible. So it's definitely getting the conscious mind out of the way, which is why it's usually a deep meditative state. It's a deep relaxed state. So when you're doing that deep relaxation, how that works is your conscious mind gets bored. It's bored. It's bored with your muscle relaxation and whatever, and it kind of gets out of the way. And your subconscious mind is the one that's in charge of your imagination. So as we have you imagining things, your subconscious mind is really taking control of that and enjoying it and taking in what we're saying. The other thing is that, we're never saying anything that doesn't resonate with you, right? We're doing things that you on a subconscious level or even on a conscious level want to do, but your rational mind gets in the way of it happening. So I don't know if I explained that well, but that's kind of how it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. Because, just so the listeners know, like Rayna and I, again, got connected. And then I said, hey, why don't you, because I'm your ideal client. So why don't you do, and plus I've got a good vibe from you from the beginning, but, I want to bring guests on this podcast that are legit. And I do get I do get lots of requests from different people and different assistance of people. And so I just want to make sure that, everybody's legit. Yeah. And again, the message is what I want to share on this podcast. And so Rayne and I spent some time together. And what I like about what you do is that we talked through like me and what I deal with and, what I'm dealing with, my thoughts, any type of things that, that I'm not happy with, that I kind of want to shed or stop thinking about or stop focusing on or things like that, those things or those feelings of frustration or guilt or things that have been a result of my life or this, the things that I've been dealing with as a mom with. And so then when we went through that hypnotherapy session, that's what you talked about, right? And you helped me walk through the things that you said to me was about accepting or getting rid of or not being so focused on a certain thing that I'm, be it that it's the guilt that I had an eating disorder and thus that was all my fault. I mean, that was some of the big guilt that I had in the beginning of like, well, I had my own and they say there's a genetic component. And so I probably just gave it to her, right? It was my fault that all this happened. So there were those kind of things. And so you spoke to those during this, half an hour session that we had. And so it's telling that subconscious that,
Yeah.
It's okay to be happy. It's okay to be, that was another thing that I always struggled with. Like, how can I be happy when my child is so unhappy?
I always like to say that, when you have children like we do, it's like your mom guilt's on steroids, right? You just so much more intense than the average mom guilt that every mom has, I think.
Well, and I think another important thing with hypnotherapy, just like any other type of therapy or practice, like it's not like, it's not like just one time and it's done. It's like going to the gym. You're not going to go to the gym, take a spin class or do weights one morning and you're like all buffed, right? And you lose the weight that you want or have the shape that you want. Yeah, that would be great. I'd be all set. But you have to do it often. And so it's that repeating. And with you, that's what you can talk about your program, how you work with people. But that's what you explained to me is like, I'm going to send you a recording of this and I want you to listen to it like every day until you get bored with what I'm saying to you. But that's the point, right? You get bored and so that your subconscious just listens to what, again, just like that smoker, when they get in the car again, it just doesn't have the same type of desire or like, that it used to have. And again, we can think about those as triggers, that there's that trigger that when you get in the car, or my husband doesn't listen to my podcast, but unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, but like he's a smoker, unfortunately, whatever, his own choice. But I remember so many times talking to him on the phone, me talking about stuff, and I'd hear him like light a cigarette. I go, do you have to smoke like every time like you talk to me? Is it like that stressful that you have to smoke a cigarette, But it's those kind of triggers. Hopefully it's not your husband and your wife that's triggering you to do something bad, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep,
so
definitely.
It's really helping your subconscious not be so triggered perhaps when certain things happen.
Or to be triggered to do something else, right? Like you can, instead of smoking, maybe take a relaxing breath, because that's really what you usually originally after. Eventually it becomes habit. But originally smoking usually is just to calm down. They think it calms them down. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if you do one session with me, it's the recording goes home with you. I don't expect it to work right away. And I don't usually, because the first time, sometimes people go right under and they're relaxed and they feel great. And they're like, that was amazing the first time. Often though, it depends on how analytical you are. People are like, I was listening to everything you said. I couldn't really relax. There was a car outside. So the more you listen to it, the more your conscious mind knows what's going to come next. It knows there's no surprises. And then you're able to relax more. And the subconscious is able to take over. I tell people a week to 10 days. And it's one of those things where you kind of have to do, it's not hard work, right? You're listening to a 30-minute like you just need to listen to it every day for it to really work. Yeah. So 1 sessions, that's what I do. When I do my programs I think I showed you the 12-week program. That's a lot more intensive. There's a lot more work in that as far as doing inner child work, higher self work, regression work, which is another type of hypnotherapy. That's something I usually don't do the first time I meet somebody, just because you have to be comfortable with me. And regression work is where you go into the hypnotic state and then we have a conversation. So we bring you back to whatever past event is really affecting the problems you're having in your current moment. And then we kind of reframe them. We talk about them while you're under hypnosis. That's something that's included in the 12 weeks as well as I offer so people who are in the thick of what you and I have been through, right? So during the 12 weeks, you also have access to me through text message where, if you're having that breakdown that we all have and you just want somebody who gets it, I make myself available. And then I do single regression. I do regression if somebody feels like they're open to it. If they've had hypnotherapy before and they just want to go straight to regression, I do offer that. But if they have never had it before, it's not the best way to start, because it's hard for you to be comfortable when your conscious mind is too involved.
Yeah. Well, but I think that would be some pretty good work to do, though.
It's work. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're going back to the time that was super stressful.
Yeah. And, moms like us, I think if you've ever dropped your child off at inpatient, right? that moment is so triggering for so many of us. And so to be able to go back and kind of reframe that is a huge guilt relief, you know? So it's that type of work that I think is so powerful.
If we could reframe that. I mean, just saying that,
everybody tears up. Yep.
Yeah. A few different times. And, you know, it's, there was a few podcast episodes that I got in the car after I did something like that. Like one of them, I live, you know, outside of Chicago. And so we use O'Hare Airport. And I remember dropping my daughter off at the airport and, you know, taking her to her, well, whatever, can't take her to the gate, but, you know, taking her in, getting her all checked in. And then I said goodbye to her and I went to the car and I recorded an episode, like all of those, like, there she goes again. And it's like all of those feelings, like, there she goes. Like, when's it going to be that I don't, you know, and I did a parking lot one. I've done those, you know, so I know what you mean, because I've been there in those situations and it's not a great situation to be in. Brought to you by Gorski Wellness and the possibility of a better you. Are you feeling sluggish? Ready for a change? Need more energy? Up for a bigger challenge? I'm Moyra Gorski, retired nurse and wellness advocate. For over 22 years, I've been helping people live healthier lives while making small changes each and every day. Those small changes lead my clients to living a healthier lifestyle with markedly better health. As a brand ambassador for the Shaklee Corporation, the most clinically proven wellness company in the world, I guide my clients to make healthier choices each day with their food, supplements, skincare, workouts, and mindset. They say getting started is half the battle. Let's make healthy happen together. If you're ready for simple, natural, sustainable solutions to feeling and looking your best, let's connect. You'll find a link in the show notes or reach out to me at moyragorski.com. Here's to a better you. But I love that idea, because what you're saying is then you take them back there, but then you're reframing it how? Like, how do you...
You know, reframing your thoughts about it. So while you're going back to that place, kind of, instead of you feeling guilty, it's bringing your subconscious mind to understand, right? No, this was a good thing, bringing the positives about it. And that's kind of individual to what the situation was for each person. You know, an example would be if you go back to a situation where there's, say, I'm going to give you a simple example. If you go back to a situation where there's an argument, right? And so when we go back to that, it's you saying all the things you wish you had said, and then also switching roles so that you're them saying all the things you wish they had said to you. So it's kind of reliving it, but doing what you wish you could have done, if that makes sense. So, and as much as it's, you know, you're going back to that moment and you're pretending that it's different, it does carry through with how you remember it in your everyday life. Because you're like, that was so traumatic, but this was, you remember all the things we did in therapy, right? So yeah, but this was how it had to be, and this is what they really meant. And, you know, so it takes that emotion, that really traumatic emotional part down, so that it's not such a trigger.
I mean, I've done some inner child work in the perhaps regression or whatever. They didn't call it necessarily, you know, that, but I've done those. I've done a few of those. It's been mostly the inner child thing, but I mean, I get that. I just wanted others to hear that, because again, it can be like, there may be another argument. And when you've done work like that, or there may be a trigger from your mother when your mother says something. And if you've done inner child work and gone back to that time when you were a child and you didn't feel like you were noticed by your mother, and
all of that,
and then you had all of that, but then you've learned to just think differently about it. And again, like you said, reframe it. Then when that happens again, you're kind of like, okay, maybe I should just, you know, listen to what she's saying and say that she's doing the best job, or whatever it is. It's very, very helpful work to, again, go back and do that work. Again, not always easy. I mean, I remember doing those work and you're crying and you're very emotional. It can be very triggering, but with a trained professional, again, very, very helpful, beneficial work. There's a book that's called Wrong Place, Wrong Time. Is that what it's called? I think it's called. I just read it. Now, it's a novel, but it's this concept that it's a mom, and she's married, and then she has a son who's like a teenager or young adult, I think, and she watches him, the first chapter, whatever. This is totally unrelated, but whatever. It's kind of related. But this is what I do. I digress at times. But it was a great book. It's a really great book. But she was looking out the window, waiting for her son to come home because he was late from curfew, and saw him walk up in the sidewalk and like go and stab a guy that was like right there and kill him. And then there was this, the police came and all this stuff. And then she goes to sleep and she wakes up and it's the same day. It's like a groundhog thing.
Oh yeah.
But then she goes to sleep but anybody else in her life, like her husband and son and anybody else, it's the day that it's supposed to be, even though she's already lived it. And then she goes to sleep and then it's the day before and then the day before. And then it ends up being 2 weeks before and a month before, whatever. But it's this concept of if you were to go back and look at a situation, she was trying to figure out why he went to kill this guy and perhaps stop that from happening. But it's that idea that you can go back and if you look at things in a different perspective, or maybe you missed things, or you're like, oh, was that what that meant? Or maybe I should pay more attention to what he said to me or whatever. It's a really great book if you like to read novels.
Good. Yeah.
It's so good. But it's kind of like it reminded me of that. It's like going back to a situation and saying, okay, what if it could have been different? Yeah. And so we can think about that possibility. What if it could be different? Because there may be a situation again in the future that now we have a chance to perhaps do it differently.
Yeah.
And I know that with my daughter and our conversations and our arguments and all of that, I've learned a lot in that work that I've done. And that's what I want the moms and dads to hear, is that it's so important for us to do the work because our relationships can be different with our children. Because I'd love to hear how, I always like to have a little conversation about that. Like, I love having a daughter. I love having the sons, but I love having a daughter and because we'd go off and like, you guys, whatever, stay here. We're going to go off and do the girl things. And then she started to struggle and I had to be the police and I had to be the like bad guy. And that really impacted our relationship. And now we have a chance, now that she's in a better place and I've done the work, we have a chance to really mend that and create a different relationship now. And that it happens. But again, I want people to hear that there is hope that, the kids do the work, right?
Right.
The loved one does the work, but we also have to do the work.
Well, and there's a lot of, there can be a lot of anger and resentment towards your child, which isn't good. But, in a lot of situations, it's almost like you're in this abusive relationship where you can't get away because they're your kid. And you just got to kind of deal with it. So once they recover and they're better, you still have all that anger and that you don't want to have it. Nobody wants to be angry at their kid, but it's the reality that there's this with the guilt, there's the resentment, and there's also just the pain that you went through, being able to let go of that so that you can kind of meet them where they are now and rebuild your relationship is huge. Because it's hard, they do get better as they get older. And I feel like they, at least in my daughter's case, as she got older, she had matured and, we found the right combination of everything that worked. She started to be able to handle her symptoms and, become pleasant to be around again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But you have to be able to meet them there and not hold everything against them, as much as you're not consciously doing that, you still have that, like, when's the other shoe going to drop? This isn't going to last. When are you going to go back to how it was? And that's not ideal either. You kind of want to be able to let that go and move forward, really. Right.
And it's hard again, because we gave birth to them and they are our children, and we know that they're going to get better. They can get better. And they also can be like, again, case in point, and my friend may listen to this, but I know somebody that her daughter, she's 30 years old and she's really not in a great place. And it's a lot better than she used to be, but it's still not great. And she got a phone call about something that happened to her and she was going to hop on a plane and go to her. And then as she's talking to somebody with her daughter in the background, her daughter's just like screaming all of these profanities and basically hate towards her because, it's everybody else's fault, right?
Yeah.
We've heard that before. It's your fault and I'm in here, whatever. And she said, I'm not going. And I go, good for you. And she goes, I know, but I'm still her mom. I go, I know, you're still her mom. And she's being verbally abusive to you. She's da, 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 da. I know the whole story, but it's like, yeah, but we're still that mom and we still want to go help. And like, we want to rescue them and all that. But there comes a point, and it's really hard within these situations. It's hard to sometimes say, guess what? I'm not coming to see you, or guess what? You can't come home. Or I sat in a support group one time and the gal said, yeah, I don't know. I haven't talked to my sister in like 2 years. She's like, I think she lives on the streets in LA. I mean, she's just a major drug addict. I mean, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
She said, I've just kind of forgotten about her, but I come to these support groups to support myself. Because again, we have to take care of all of that. Like, but what do I deal with? How do I deal with this stuff? The pain that's coming up, the fact that I've kind of had to forget about my sister or my daughter or my husband or whoever it is, but it's not so easy to do that.
No,
that's the only way that we can really get through. That's why we meet at the health club and lift heavy weights, because it helps us deal with the shit that's in our lives,
Yeah. No, it's not an easy road. That's for sure.
Is there anything else that you find that women are going through, the moms are going through when their kids are struggling? I mean, we've talked about guilt and, just pain and stuff like that. Do you find that there's other things that you work with, that you find that comes up a lot?
I think also their other relationships struggle, people don't necessarily understand. I feel like a lot of people lose friends or even family members who just don't get it, right? Because it's hard for somebody to understand exactly what you're going through with your child, especially if it's something that in a lot of cases they act okay at school. Their teachers are like, we don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, I think they losing more loss, like friends, family who just don't understand.
Somebody said to me the other day, they're like, you should talk to the siblings of, like you said, those relationships can change, or they can be strained for sure. I know when our daughter would go into treatment and my youngest son was living at home, I mean, I hated to have her go there, but again, she was getting the help she needed. And it was that time, it was like I spent I'm like, okay, let's go do something together. Let's watch a movie, or let's go someplace or whatever. I tried, because it was so hard when I had somebody that needed so much attention in our home. And then the other child that was in my home didn't get much. And I saw him retreat and kind of like, figure out a way to deal with the shit that he heard and saw around him. And so it impacts the whole family.
Yeah, definitely. I have an older son and a younger daughter. So she, this is my middle child, but the youngest she was little and she just tagged along to everything. She was, I think waiting rooms at hospitals were like her playtime. She she knew where every toy was, every book. I mean, that's kind of where we spent a lot of time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not easy for the whole family.
Yeah. But those are definitely things that I know you can help with. Again, family therapy. We've heard that so many times, and I wish we had done more of it. But the times that we did do it, when the treatment centers actually went through with setting up some family therapy, it was great, because it gave the others to have a chance to have a voice, with that neutral third party there to them to say, well, hey, this is how you made me feel when this happened, or whatever. So definitely things that I know, again, hypnotherapy can help with as well.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Hard subjects, but it's the work that really I encourage people to think about and to be open to, if you have those, because it's not oftentimes when it's one child within the family struggling, it's kind of a family, it impacts the whole family. It's a family issue. Does. Perhaps it could be a result of some things going on in the family dynamic that's causing, that kind of thing. So it's really good to take a look at all of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think this was really good. Very, very helpful. Again, I always love to continue to learn more and just to get that validation for, again, the work that I've done, the work that I encourage other people to do if they are, again, sitting on this side of the table and having those loved ones in their lives that,
Yes.
and we get into these behaviors that perhaps we enable and maybe we don't want to admit that, or we allow things, or we don't know how to set those boundaries. And I think you can agree, like when these things start to happen, these things like your daughter, starts to refuse to go to school. Well, a couple of times, hey, that's not such a big deal. And then it becomes kind of, you're like, what is going on? Right. And you're afraid, you're taken by surprise. It's like, what is going on here? And you just don't know what to do. And so you go into this survival mode. And I'm here to say that sometimes, again, when you're in the midst of it, it's hard to get the help for yourself, but
it is. Yeah. But it's also necessary, I think. I think a lot of us on the other side will say, yeah, I wish I did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that a mom said in a support group that I was at, where it was at one of the treatment centers, and so the girl, the former patient came and shared her story of recovery. Then the mom got a chance to stand up and talk. And the three things that she told me, which I may have shared with you earlier, but the three things she told me stuck with me forever, will stick with me forever. The first one was, you need to get off the roller coaster. And she said, my husband and I needed to go learn about this mental health disorder that we knew nothing about. And so they went to NAMI and, went to support groups and read and things like that. And she said, I needed to get a therapist for myself. That idea, I brought that up before, of getting off the roller coaster. People are like, well, how can you walk away from I'm not talking about walking away from your child, but you're so close sometimes to the shit that they're going through and all that stuff. You got to get off the roller coaster. You got to be right by their side along their ride, but you have to I don't know if you experienced this, but it would be like things were good and then they weren't. And then they got better and then they weren't. And that's a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
You get the call from treatment and they're screaming at you. And then 2 days later, oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. It's so good. I'm so thankful for you. You're the best mom ever, and then 2 days later, it's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So it's that roller coaster. We have to be, and again, this was a hard thing that a therapist told me from one of her places, but maybe you've heard it before. She said, never lose hope that your child will recover. And we never want to lose hope that our loved one will recover and get better. But she said, you have to give up the expectation that they will. I'm like, what? But it's kind of it, right?
Yeah.
You have to, okay, I don't know. And it's tough to deal with. But again, that's why it's great to work with somebody like you that can help you deal with how does that make you feel when somebody does that to you, or you realize that that's the truth of your life.
Right. Yeah.
One of the best things for me was walking into an office to see a therapist. And she's like, what, in a nice way, she goes, well, what are you doing here? She says, I usually treat the children, the teenagers. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm dealing with some pains popping up in me that I don't even know what to do with. So I figured I might as well come and talk to somebody that's an expert on eating disorders. So you can help me get through this pain that I'm going through. We definitely need to get help for ourselves. So anyway, I could talk for hours. You know that. You just know me a little bit, but I could talk a long time. So tell the audience, Rayna, where people can find you. And I know you've got some, again, good things that you like to share with other people if they want to learn more about you and the services that you provide.
Yeah. So the best place to find me is my website, which is Hypnotherapy with Rayne, and it's Rayne. Shockingly, nobody has taken that name. So I am also on all social media under the same thing. But on my website, you can book a free consult where we can just talk and figure out if I'm a right fit for you. I also have some freebies on there when you go to my website, there's a section called Empowered Parenting. So under there, you'll find everything that has to do with what we talked about. Mm-hmm. And that's really the best place to find me.
And any last words for the listeners as we close up today?
I always go back to the old put your own oxygen mask on first, right? That mother, we all know that saying, but it's true. You really have to. You can't support your child in the best way possible when you're drained and you're just running on empty. You gotta fuel up.
Somebody showed me, well, not showed me, but I watched on Instagram yesterday, that whole idea of like filling your cup up first.
Yeah.
She had like a glass of water, and then she put like a teaspoon or a spoonful of dirt in there. She said, so crap happens, shit happens in our life or whatever. And then we sit there and we try to pull the dirt out. Like the dirt is like dissipating in there, but you're trying to pull it out. And so when you were pulling the dirt out, they're pulling the water. And she said, in the end, like we just come up with an empty cup. And so then she goes, you know what? It was such a great visual. So then you have to and then she took like a picture of just clean water. And she says, so you just have to put the good stuff in. And she filled up the cup and it just overflowed and overflowed and overflowed. And before you know it, the water was almost clear.
Yeah.
Like all the shit was gone. Like, because she put all the good stuff in. I was like, wow, that was good. And I think that's a great, it's a great visual for us to remember. And just like you said, put your oxygen mask on first, fill your cup up. Yeah. If you put that goodness in, the other stuff just doesn't show up, right?
Absolutely.
Well, so glad that you joined me today, Rayna. I'm so glad to have met you. Again, continue to do the great work. And I know we're going to continue to stay in touch.
Yeah, definitely.
But I know the listeners are going to get great value, or did get great value from this too. And again, I always say, please continue to share these episodes with others, because there's lots of people that are like you and me that are sitting here that really perhaps just need that permission to go get some help for themselves. And I always say, don't be afraid of hypnotherapy. It's not like quacking like a duck. It's really
not.
It's really not. It's really the essential work that we need to do in order to really, again, give ourselves the opportunity to heal, take care of ourselves so we can show up better in life for those we love, including ourselves. So thanks, Rayna.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you next time. Hey there, ready to live a more joyful life? Considering connecting with someone who can help you? If so, I'd like to be that person. I offer a free consultation where we determine where the chaos is in your life and how you can learn to bring more joy each and every day. Visit my website, moyragorski.com, or simply email me, moyra@moyragorski.com, with more joy in the subject line. I look forward to connecting, and I'm here to say there will always be some chaos, which requires a little juggling, but you can find joy and live your life intentionally filled with that joy. Let me help you on your journey to joy. And that's joy, the journey of you.